My name is Daniel Parker. I'm 32 years old. And for 15 years I wasn't seen as a son. I wasn't seen as a brother. I was the maid of my own family. While my sister got new dresses and my brother got new cars, I was the one scrubbing their dirty plates after dinner. While my parents boasted about their perfect kids, they handed me a broom and told me to clean the floors. At family gatherings they didn't introduce me as Daniel, the son. They'd laugh and say, "This is Danny, our little house helper." Relatives chuckled, shaking their heads in pity, as if I had no future beyond carrying trays and mopping floors. Every morning before school I made breakfast for everyone. Every night after work I washed dishes, folded laundry and scrubbed bathrooms. If I complained I was told, "This is your place. Be grateful you even live here." And when I tried to dream out loud when I talked about starting a business, they laughed harder than ever. My father sneered, "A company? You can't even keep your room clean. Stick to what you're good at, being useful around the house." Those words cut deeper than any chore ever could. But what my parents didn't know, what none of them knew, was that late at night after the cleaning was done I was building something in silence. A company they dismissed as a joke. A vision they couldn't even understand. 15 years they treated me like their servant. But today the same parents who laughed at me are begging for jobs in the very company they once mocked. And let me tell you, success doesn't just feel good. When you've been underestimated your entire life, success becomes the sweetest revenge of all. Growing up in the Parker household felt less like being part of a family and more like working for one. We lived in a modest home in Cleveland, Ohio. On the outside it looked ordinary, white shutters, trimmed lawn, the smell of my mom's Sunday cooking drifting out the windows. To neighbors we were the nice Parker family. But behind closed doors the roles were never equal. My sister Jessica was the golden child. Blonde hair, varsity cheerleader, the daughter my parents bragged about at every church gathering. My brother Ryan was the star athlete. My dad wore his football photos like trophies, telling anyone who would listen, "That boy's going places." And then there was me, Daniel. The extra. The one who didn't shine. The one who didn't matter. From the age of 10 I became the family maid. When Jessica wanted to focus on homework I was told to do her chores. When Ryan had practice I was told to clean his room. Every Saturday while they hung out with friends I scrubbed the bathrooms, vacuumed the carpets, mowed the lawn. At first I thought it was normal. I thought maybe this was how families worked. Everyone had a role. But as I got older the truth became harder to ignore. Theirs was a life of privilege, mine was a life of servitude. I remember one Christmas when I was 15. Jessica got a brand new laptop. Ryan got a shiny new iPhone. Me? I got cleaning supplies wrapped in a box. My mom actually laughed when I opened it. "Now you can keep your chores organized, Danny." Everyone chuckled while I sat there forcing a smile, holding a bottle of glass cleaner like it was a gift. Then came my high school graduation. I worked hard, not perfect grades but good enough to be proud of. The ceremony was the biggest day of my life. I walked across the stage, shook the principal's hand, looked into the crowd, only to see empty seats where my parents should have been. Later I found out they skipped the ceremony because Ryan had a football tournament. That was the day something inside me broke. No matter what I achieved I would never matter more than their chores, their laughter or their golden children. But even in those dark moments there were sparks of hope. My grandmother, who lived a few towns over, was the only one who truly saw me. I'd visit her on weekends and while I helped her cook she'd look me in the eye and say, "Danny, don't let them convince you that you're small. You've got something in you they can't see yet." Those words became my lifeline. At 16, while cleaning Ryan's room one day, I found an old half-broken laptop he had tossed aside. I asked if I could have it and he shrugged. "Sure. It's useless anyway." To him it was junk. To me it was salvation. That night, after finishing the dishes, I sat on the floor in my room and turned it on. The screen flickered, the battery barely held charge, but it worked. Slowly, clumsily, I started teaching myself. First it was simple things, how to type faster, how to design basic flyers. Then I stumbled onto online tutorials about websites and digital marketing. I was hooked. But of course I couldn't let my parents know. Every time they caught me on that laptop my dad scoffed. "Danny, stop wasting time. No one makes money staring at a screen all night. So I worked in silence. During the day I scrubbed their floors. At night I built dreams no one knew about. It wasn't easy. Some nights I cried while typing, my hands raw from cleaning chemicals. Some mornings I went to school exhausted because I'd stayed up until 3 a.m. learning how to code. But those quiet hours, alone with that broken laptop, were the only times I felt free. The more I learned, the more I realized something. Maybe I wasn't worthless. Maybe I wasn't just a maid. Maybe I was building something bigger than any of them could imagine. Still, the insults didn't stop. My mom once told me, "You'll never leave this house, Danny. You'll always need us." Jessica called me the butler in front of her friends. Ryan once laughed and said, "Don't forget to clean the toilets before you try to start your fake little business." Their words hurt. But instead of destroying me, they became fuel. Because deep down I made a silent promise to myself. One day I would stop being their maid. One day I would build something that made them regret every laugh, every insult, every command. They just didn't know it yet. My life had two sides. By day I was the Parker family's unpaid maid, scrubbing bathrooms, hauling laundry, cooking meals I barely had time to eat myself. By night, when the house finally went quiet, I became someone else. The glow of that broken laptop became my escape, my rebellion. The screen cracked, the battery fried, but it opened doors no one in my family could slam shut. At first it was tiny things, designing simple flyers for local businesses, creating birthday invitations for neighbors' kids. I charged next to nothing, sometimes just $10 or $20. But when someone looked at my work and said, "Wow, this looks great," it lit a fire inside me. Praise was rare in my home. Hearing it from strangers meant everything. I started spending every spare minute learning. Tutorials, online forums, free courses. While Jessica uploaded selfies and Ryan played video games, I devoured content about branding, social media strategy, web design. I wasn't just learning skills, I was learning freedom. One night, while wiping down the counters after dinner, I overheard my parents laughing in the living room. "Danny thinks he's running a business now," my dad chuckled. "Kid can't even mow the lawn without missing a patch. He'll never make it." The words cut, but I didn't argue. I just went upstairs, closed my door, and worked harder. The first big turning point came when a local coffee shop hired me to redesign their menu and social media page. It was small, just a few $100s, but it was the first time I felt like my work mattered outside the walls of my parents' house. I poured everything into that project. When the owner messaged me a week later saying, "Our sales went up 20% since you redid our Instagram. People are noticing us," I cried. Not because of the money, but because for once I wasn't invisible. Word spread. Slowly, quietly, my little side hustle grew. A referral here, a client there. Soon I was juggling school, chores, and late-night client calls with small businesses across Ohio. So I kept it hidden. If my parents knew I was making money from that silly computer, they'd find a way to tear it down. So I let them believe I was wasting time. They mocked me, called me lazy, told relatives I just sat in his room all day. But behind that door I was building brick by brick. The sacrifices were brutal. I skipped meals to save money for software. I walked instead of taking the bus, stuffing the extra few dollars into a jar marked business fund. I sold old toys, my bike, even a jacket I loved just to afford a faster second-hand laptop. I gave up weekends, friendships, even dating. While other kids my age were out at parties, I was hunched over a desk, designing logos and writing proposals for clients who didn't even know I was just a teenager working out of a cramped bedroom. There were nights when exhaustion crushed me, when I stared at the screen with tears blurring my vision. But every time I thought about quitting, I remembered the sound of my parents' laughter. That laughter became fuel. By the time I turned 20, my little side hustle wasn't so little anymore. I had a roster of steady clients and a growing reputation. Local businesses recommended me, online forums sent me referrals, and I started to realize I didn't just have a job. I had the foundation of a company. But to my parents I was still the maid. Even on days when I pulled in more from a single client than my dad made in a week, they still ordered me to scrub floors, mow lawns, wash dishes. They didn't ask about my work. They didn't want to know. Because if they admitted I was building something real, they'd have to admit they were wrong about me. and they couldn't handle that. So I stayed silent, letting them believe I was nothing. Because one day the silence would break. And when it did, it wouldn't just prove them wrong, it would flip their entire world upside down. The moment that broke me, and in some ways rebuilt me, came at a family reunion. It was held at a rented banquet hall on the outskirts of town, a big event my parents had been planning for months. Aunts, uncles, cousins, even distant relatives we hadn't seen in years all showed up. Over 100 people packed into the hall, dressed sharp, plates piled high with food, laughter bouncing off the walls. I should have been a guest. I should have been part of the celebration. But of course I wasn't. While Jessica posed for photos in her designer dress and Ryan bragged about his new job, I was carrying trays of food to the buffet. My parents had volunteered me to help in the kitchen, as if I were part of the staff instead of part of the family. "Daniel, wipe down those tables," my mom barked across the hall. Guests turned to watch. Some chuckled. Others shook their heads in pity. I swallowed hard and did it, my face burning. The humiliation didn't stop there. At one point, an older relative asked my dad what I was up to these days. I froze, hoping, just this once, he'd mention my work. He could have said, "Daniel's running a business," or at least, "He's figuring things out." But no. My dad smirked, leaned back in his chair and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Danny? Oh, he's our live-in maid. He spends most of his time hiding in his room, pretending to run a business. Isn't that right, Danny?" The table erupted in laughter. Aunts slapped their knees. Cousins smirked. Jessica rolled her eyes. Ryan muttered, "Fake Sue," under his breath. I stood there with a tray in my hands, face burning so hot I thought I might pass out. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell them about my clients, my contracts, the hours I spent building something real. But I didn't. Not then. Because I realized something. No matter what I said, they wouldn't believe me. They didn't want to. To them, I was locked in the role they had written for me. The maid, the failure, the nobody. So I stayed quiet, swallowing every ounce of anger. But inside something shifted. That night, while scrubbing plates in the kitchen sink, I looked at my reflection in the steel faucet. My face streaked with sweat, my hands red from soap, my back aching. And I whispered to myself, never again. Never again would I let them humiliate me like this. Never again would I allow their laughter to define me. If they wanted to treat me like a maid, fine. I would play the role a little longer. But one day I would own the house. After dinner, the humiliation reached its peak. The DJ had everyone laughing and dancing, calling families up for fun little games. When it was our family's turn, the DJ asked each parent to share something unique about their kids. My mom gushed about Jessica's cheerleading trophies. My dad beamed about Ryan's football scholarships. And when the mic came to me, my dad smirked and said, "Well, Daniel's unique because he's the only one who actually cleans the house." The room roared with laughter. I smiled weakly, pretending it didn't hurt, pretending it didn't matter. But inside I was crumbling. I left the hall that night with my fists clenched so tight my nails cut into my palms. Tears stung my eyes, but I refused to let them fall where anyone could see. Walking home alone, I replayed every laugh, every smirk, every dismissive word. And I promised myself that the next time my name echoed through a hall full of people, it wouldn't be as a joke. It would be as someone they could no longer ignore. Someone they would regret underestimating. Someone whose success would silence every laugh. The night of that reunion replayed in my head for weeks. Every laugh, every smirk, every dismissive comment echoed louder than the applause the DJ got. But instead of crushing me, it sharpened me. While my family went on bragging about Jessica's new apartment and Ryan's football trophies, I disappeared deeper into my work. My laptop became my sanctuary, my battlefield, my lifeline. By 21, my side hustle wasn't just side income anymore. I had a list of steady clients across Ohio. By 23, I had clients in New York and Chicago. And by 25, I wasn't just freelancing. I was building a company. But to my parents, I was still just Danny the maid. Even when I pulled in more in 1 month than my dad did in 6, I kept my success hidden. I didn't drive a flashy car. I didn't buy new clothes. I reinvested every dollar back into the company. I wanted my work to grow strong roots before I showed anyone the tree. And quietly the tree started to grow. The turning point came when a mid-sized retail chain in New Jersey reached out to me. They wanted me to handle their entire digital branding. It was a contract worth 6 figures. I remember staring at the email, my hands trembling. 6 figures. Me, the family maid. I signed the deal, and within months their sales skyrocketed. Word spread fast. Soon I wasn't chasing clients anymore. They were chasing me. By the time I hit 28, I had officially registered my company, Parker Digital Solutions. And though I never said it out loud, those 3 words felt like a declaration. I exist. I matter. I am more than what they said I was. Meanwhile, my parents kept me locked in my old role. Danny, take out the trash. Danny, mow the lawn. Danny, help Jessica move into her new condo. Sometimes, while scrubbing their dishes, my phone would buzz with emails from CEOs, investors, even journalists asking to profile me. I'd dry my hands on a towel and type back replies, a secret smile tugging at my lips. They still saw a maid. But the world was starting to see a CEO. Then came the deal that changed everything. A Fortune 500 company, yes, one of those massive corporations my parents worshipped, approached me. They wanted to partner with Parker Digital Solutions for a nationwide rebrand. It was a deal worth millions. I nearly collapsed when I saw the numbers. I had dreamed of this moment, but seeing it on paper was something else entirely. For weeks I worked around the clock finalizing contracts, reviewing strategies, hiring more staff. My small team turned into a growing company overnight. I leased office space downtown, filled it with computers, hired people smarter than me to handle operations. The more the company grew, the more surreal it felt. Every morning I'd wake up and remind myself, this isn't a dream. This is real. And yet at home nothing had changed. At the dinner table, my parents still bragged about Jessica's Instagram following and Ryan's coaching career. When I mentioned my office, they waved it off. My dad even chuckled, an office? Danny, don't waste money pretending. Just stick to cleaning around here. I didn't argue, because I knew something they didn't. The press release was scheduled for Monday morning. Parker Digital Solutions would officially be announced as the creative partner for one of the biggest corporations in the country. But on Sunday, the night before, my parents hosted a small dinner for family and neighbors. The perfect stage. That evening, I sat at the corner of the table, listening as my relatives fawned over Jessica's latest promotion and Ryan's new car. As usual, I was invisible. At one point, an uncle turned to me and asked, "So Daniel, what do you do again?" "Still helping around the house." The table laughed. My parents didn't correct him. I smiled faintly, my phone buzzing in my pocket with another email from the Fortune 500 team. Final approval granted. Tomorrow we go live. I wanted to laugh. The contrast was absurd. Here I was, mocked as the maid, while in less than 12 hours, my name would be plastered across business headlines nationwide. So I stayed quiet, sipping my water, letting them laugh. Because by the time they realized the truth, it would already be too late. That night, lying in bed, I thought about the years of humiliation. The cleaning supplies I got for Christmas. The empty seats at my graduation. The trays of food I carried at family gatherings. All of it had led here. Tomorrow the world would finally see me. And my parents, the ones who mocked, belittled, and dismissed me, would be the first to feel the shockwave. Monday morning changed everything. I woke up to my phone buzzing non-stop, notifications stacked one on top of another. Texts, emails, calls. Headlines. Parker Digital Solutions lands multi-million-dollar Fortune 500 partnership. Meet Daniel Parker, the young CEO behind America's fastest-growing branding agency. My name was everywhere. LinkedIn feeds lit up with congratulations. Business blogs posted my story. Clients I had once begged for projects were now emailing me first, desperate to work with me. Journalists requested interviews. For the first time in my life, I wasn't invisible. I was news. By noon, the ripple effect hit my community. Neighbors who had smirked at me while I mowed my parents' lawn were sharing the article on Facebook. Can you believe this is Danny Parker? The same kid his parents always put down. Cousins who once laughed at me at reunions slid into my DMs with wide-eyed emojis and Bro, so proud of you. Relatives who had called me the butler whispered among themselves, scrambling to rewrite the story of who I was. And my parents, they couldn't hide. Their phones rang just as much as mine, but for a different reason. Friends and colleagues asked the same question. Why didn't you ever mention Daniel's company? You must be so proud. Proud. The word must have stung them like fire. Because for years they hadn't just ignored me, they had mocked me. Now they were forced to smile through clenched teeth as the world celebrated the son they had dismissed. That evening, I walked into my office downtown for the first official team meeting since the announcement. The space was buzzing. Employees shaking my hand, congratulating me, brimming with excitement about the future. My name was on the glass door. Daniel Parker, founder and CEO. I stood there for a moment, taking it all in. For years, I had scrubbed floors with my hands. Now those same hands were signing contracts worth millions. And then, as if the universe couldn't resist perfect timing, my parents showed up. They walked into the office unannounced, their faces tight, eyes darting around at the buzzing team, the glowing monitors, the sleek office design. For the first time they looked small. Danny, my mom said softly, almost as if she couldn't believe she was using my name in a different tone. This is impressive. My dad cleared his throat. We didn't realize you'd come this far. I almost laughed. 15 years of mockery, and now they didn't realize. What do you want? I asked, my voice calm, steady. They exchanged glances, nervous. Finally, my dad spoke. We were hoping, maybe, you could find something for us here. A position. Anything. The irony almost knocked the breath out of me. For 15 years I had been their unpaid maid. The one who cooked, cleaned, scrubbed, served. And now they were asking me for work. My employees, sitting nearby, pretended not to eavesdrop, but I could feel the tension in the room. I looked at my parents, the same people who once laughed at the idea of me running a company, and I smiled. Funny, I said quietly. You spent years telling me I wasn't good enough. That my business was a joke. That I'd never make it. And now you want to work for me. They shifted uncomfortably, their pride cracking under the weight of the truth. For once I didn't need to shout. I didn't need to prove anything. The proof was all around us. In the glowing screens, in the employees who believed in me, in the signed contracts sitting on my desk. The maid had become the master. That night when I locked up the office, I walked out onto the street, the city lights reflecting in the glass. My phone buzzed again. Another journalist wanting to feature me, another client begging for a meeting. I thought back to the boy who opened a box of cleaning supplies on Christmas morning, to the teenager who sat alone at his graduation, to the young man mocked as a butler, in front of 100 relatives. That boy had been humiliated. But this man, this CEO, was untouchable. And the same parents who once ordered me to scrub their floors now stood in line, waiting for a place in the empire they had laughed at. When the press release went viral, my life moved like a fast train, and my family was left behind on the tracks. In less than a week, Parker Digital Solutions became a household name in the industry. Reporters flooded me with requests for interviews. Business leaders I had once admired from a distance were suddenly asking to meet me for coffee. Speaking invitations rolled in, each one bigger than the last. And the whispers back home grew louder. Neighbors who once pitied me while I carried grocery bags or scrubbed the driveway now bragged, "We always knew Danny was different." Relatives who had laughed at me during reunions called my parents with not-so-subtle questions. "So, how does it feel knowing your son is a millionaire?" For years my parents had thrived on community approval. But now the approval wasn't theirs, it was mine. Jessica, the golden child, felt the sting the hardest. She had lived her entire life as the center of attention. The daughter who got the new clothes, the expensive car, the spotlight at every family gathering. But now people compared her to me. At first she rolled her eyes, brushing it off. "Please, it's just luck. Danny got lucky with some computer thing." But the computer thing didn't go away. It grew. Her friends who once envied her started asking about me instead. Relatives who once fawned over her achievements now whispered about her fading glow. The humiliation of that shift showed in her strained smiles and sharp remarks. Ryan didn't take it any better. He had been the star athlete, the pride of my father's stories. But football dreams don't last forever, and when his career stalled, the comparisons started. Well, Ryan had potential, but Daniel's the one who made it. He hated it. And though he'd never admit it, I could see it in his eyes whenever we crossed paths, resentment mixed with shame. My parents, meanwhile, tried to rewrite history. At first, they told anyone who would listen, we always knew Daniel had talent. We supported him the whole time. But people weren't fools. They remembered the way I was treated at reunions. They remembered me carrying trays while Jessica posed in the spotlight. They remembered my father's jokes about me being the maid. And gossip spreads fast. In church circles, at the grocery store, at community events, people whispered, the Parkers mocked their own son. Now he's the one putting them to shame. The same pride my parents once wore like a crown turned into chains. Meanwhile, my world expanded. I opened a second office in New York. I hired a team of 30 employees. Forbes ran a feature on me, From Family Outcast to CO, The Rise of Daniel Parker. I stood on stages, delivering keynote speeches to audiences of thousands. Each time I felt the ghost of my past sitting in the crowd, the boy with the cleaning supplies on Christmas morning. He was watching, smiling, reminding me never to forget where I came from. But the most surreal shift came in private. My parents, who once barked orders at me, Danny, do the dishes. Danny, mow the lawn, now sat across from me in my office, asking meekly if I had work for them. Work. In the same company they had called a joke. The irony was sharp enough to cut. They wanted stability. They wanted to share in the empire they had dismissed. And though part of me wanted to slam the door in their faces, another part of me paused. Because success had already done the revenge for me. I didn't need to humiliate them, they had humiliated themselves. As weeks passed, the contrast grew even clearer. On one side, me, celebrated, invited to galas, interviewed on podcasts, shaking hands with leaders I once only saw on TV. On the other side, my parents, shrinking under the weight of community judgment, Jessica fighting irrelevance, Ryan hiding from comparisons. The Parker name used to belong to them. Now it belonged to me. And no one, not the laughter of my past, not the insults, not the slap of humiliation, could ever take it away. The day my parents sat across from me in my office, waiting for my decision, I realized life had come full circle. For 15 years I had been their maid, the boy who scrubbed toilets, folded laundry, and served dinner while they laughed at my dreams. And now they were the ones asking if I could give them work. It wasn't anger that filled me in that moment. It wasn't even revenge. It was clarity. Because success had already flipped the balance. They didn't own me anymore. They didn't get to define me. I wasn't the maid. I wasn't the failure. I wasn't the joke. I was Daniel Parkerville. And for the first time they saw it too. I leaned back in my chair studying them. My father's eyes darted nervously around the office, taking in the glass walls, the rows of employees, the hum of productivity. My mother wrung her hands in her lap, her pride swallowed by the weight of reality. Daniel, my dad said finally, we made mistakes. We didn't treat you right. But we're family. Can't we start over? Just give us a chance. I thought about all the times I had begged for a chance. For a kind word, for recognition, for support. I thought about the Christmas morning I unwrapped cleaning supplies, the empty seats at my graduation, the nights I cried into my pillow because no matter how hard I worked, it was never enough. And then I thought about where I was sitting now. They hadn't built this company. They hadn't lifted me up. I had done it alone, through sacrifice, sleepless nights, and sheer determination. And that meant the power to decide was mine. I'll give you jobs, I said finally, my voice steady. But not because I owe you. And not because you deserve it. I'll give you jobs because I've built something so strong, I can afford to show mercy. They both exhaled, relief washing over their faces. But before they could speak, I raised a hand. But hear me clearly, I added. I'll never be your servant again. I'll never be the family maid. If you work here, you'll answer to the company. You'll answer to me. And you will respect me, not as your son but as your boss. The silence in the room was heavy. My father nodded slowly. My mother blinked back tears. For once they didn't argue. They couldn't. Because the truth was undeniable. That night when I left the office, I drove past our old family home. The lights were on in the windows, the same house where I had spent countless nights cleaning dishes and scrubbing floors. But it didn't feel like home anymore. My home was the life I had built. The office downtown, the contracts in my desk, the employees who believed in me, the respect I had carved out of nothing. And as I sat there in the car staring at that house, I realized something profound. I didn't need their validation. I didn't need their apology. I didn't even need their forgiveness. Because success had already given me everything they couldn't. To anyone who has ever been underestimated, dismissed, or treated like they were less, remember this. You don't need to fight for their approval. You don't need to beg for their respect. Work quietly. Build relentlessly. Let them laugh if they want to. Let them call you names, doubt you, humiliate you. Because one day the tables will turn. And when they do, you won't have to say a word. Your success will do the talking for you. And trust me, nothing silences laughter faster than the sound of applause with your name on it.